I've actually always been anxiously attached, but I'm not anxiously attached now. There's a time in my life where me and my partner at the time, we were going off to school. I remember him writing me this letter, and he's just like, it's okay if you kiss other people. And I remember thinking like, this is very strange. And so, I went off to college, did my thing, and I realized I was really anxiously attached. I was feeling really insecure about being, in college and him doing his own thing and telling you, I was on a big campus. I ain't gonna say no names, okay? I was on a huge campus, very well-known school. I could have been unfaithful, but I wasn't. But my thing was, hey, I wanted him to always be there. I wanted him to come visit a lot, which he didn't. Lo and behold, when it was his time to go to school, he decided to go to a school down the street, which was perfect for me because at the time I was driving, and so I would drive to go see him, or I would catch the bus to go see him because it was like literally like a 20-minute bus ride. I grew very attached to him. I felt like I needed him around. I think I was almost becoming very codependent, and it's funny because I wasn't codependent when I first went off to school, but once he went to school, I became codependent, and it sucked. It was at a time in my life where I felt I needed him and only him. I would have my best friend. He would come up from New York. We would spend time together. I would go to see him in New York. But all the time I went in New York, I'm thinking about my boyfriend at the time. And it made me realize like, wow, I felt like I was nothing without him. Fast forward, my friend and I went to go do a pop-up visit on him, and he was cheating.
Oh my God, no way.
Okay. After I figured out he was cheating, I felt my whole world crumble. I remember going back to my dorm room and just laying on the floor thinking like, yo, God, what's up with this? Like, I was so faithful to him the whole entire time I was there. And I think we were dating at the point for like 2.5 years at this point. And I'm like, how could he cheat on me? And I thought like, wow, it's because I was putting my security in man and not in God. Even then on that dorm room floor, I'm thinking like, Lord, it's not about being with someone, it's about being with God. And I also remember graduating school and then thinking like, okay, I'm good. And then going into a job and feeling all the insecurities come back. And me starting to think about my childhood, me starting to think about all the relationships that failed and how I was becoming super codependent on them and not realizing how detrimental they were to my health, feeling super anxiously attached and highly sensitive to everything. But it wasn't until I had another encounter with God that helped me become securely attached. But before I continue on this story, I want to say, hey, Conscious Crew, welcome back to the Conscious Creative Corner. I am your host, Sia the Transparent Therapist, and on this podcast, you know that we are unpacking trauma to heal relationships. Now, I'm sharing a very personal story, which I haven't really shared, but I thought it was very important for me to explain this because attachment styles show up all the time. They can show up with your friendships, your relationships, the workplace, because they show up in the workplace, y'all. It's important for us to recognize what attachment style we have and how we can transfer into a more secure attachment style. Now, I'm going to preface this with saying a lot of research is going to tell you what you can do, and it does take practice, but I'm a little different because I think in order for us to be securely attached, we need to be securely attached in God. But if you're still interested, why don't you keep on watching, hit that like button, join the trauma-free tribe. I told you about my story very briefly. Maybe if y'all want to hear the whole story in depth and how I caught him or whatever, let me know below because I'm here for a good story time. But the whole purpose of this video is for you to understand how I moved from anxiously attached to securely attached. A lot of times we don't know our attachment styles. So I want to go briefly over what attachment styles are. If you haven't seen the video that's going to pop up right here, I will suggest watching it after you watch this video because I go super in depth on what attachment styles are. But for now, I want to just tell you there are 4 types of attachment styles. So we have our secure attachment style, we have our anxious attachment style, we have our avoidant attachment style, and we have our disorganized attachment style. Now, if I'm going too fast, in the comments section below, say, slow down, girl, slow down, because I know I can talk fast sometimes. So in our secure attachment styles, what that basically looks like, you grew up in an environment that was super warm, maybe caring. You were free to speak your mind. No one was going to box it down if you talk. You were able to just have conversations. Your parents were there for you. You had predictability. It was very maybe an honest and open communication style. Then when you move into an anxious attachment style, which is the one that I'm talking about, maybe you have some relationship insecurities. And I didn't mention this in my story, but a lot of what I was experiencing actually had a lot to do with me migrating to the US with my parent. But I did have some fear of abandonment. My father whom I love dearly. He's in my life right now, but he wasn't always in my life consistently. When you have anxious attachment style, you might have some mood fluctuations, be overly accommodating for people, right? Where it's just like, hey, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And like, if you remember my story, I didn't say this part, but he wouldn't visit me, but I would go visit him. Right? My best friend would visit me, but my boyfriend at the time would not visit me. And so being overly accommodating, feeling highly sensitive, doing all these things, those are signs of an anxious attachment style. Now, if you have an avoidant attachment style, which at times I did have avoidant attachment styles too, that would be with my family. There is a fear of getting close to people. You low-key have a fear of rejection, so you don't get close to people. You avoid all conflict. So it's like, hey, you have this problem. Hey, I don't want to talk about it. But the anxious person might be like, no, let's talk about it. Let's squash it now. You know, an avoidant person might be like, no, I don't want to talk about it. You might feel super emotionally distant from people. There's so many things that could happen. You also are very logical in your responses. We have emotional mind or logical mind, which makes wise mind. But when you're avoidant, you're thinking super logical. Emotions are out the window. And then we have our disorganized attachment. These are people who actually been through like hardcore trauma. We like to say it's a mixture of anxious attachment and avoidant attachment. You might have a tendency of like disassociating. So you might be in a room with a person, that person's talking, and you're like off somewhere. And they might like, where'd you go? Because they can see you gazing off into La La Land. You might have the inability to self-regulate. So you might feel super like frustrated, but you can't calm down as much as you would if you weren't disorganized. So those are just some parameters there. Remember, in disorganized attachment, it's a mixture between anxious and avoidant, but disorganized, you're having trouble with finding intimacy and trust, whereas in avoidant, you just don't even want to really find intimacy and trust. And in anxiously attachment, you really want those things. So it's always a push and pull. Now, if you want more information on your attachment styles, there is a great book. It's called Attached by Amir Levine. I have it in my shop, so check the description box below. Go ahead and purchase that book. Amazing. I actually have numerous books in there about attachment. If you are a leader and you definitely want to maintain your relationships but still be successful, I have my Increasing Connections book for leaders that definitely talks a bit about how stress and trauma, and I think a bit about how your attachment might be wrapped up in there. And that book is in my shop, my Amazon store below. So go ahead and get that book as well, because these are all excellent resources. Now let's kind of move into how I transferred my attachment style and how you can too. I talk a lot about self-awareness. So the first step to just transferring your attachment style to something that's a little bit more healthy is being aware of what's happening in your body. Maybe you're feeling some frustration. Maybe you're feeling some stress. For me, when I caught my ex at the time, I was feeling very confused and hurt. Right? So being able to identify those things can be helpful in moving forward, because you also need to identify what attachment style you are. Because I could have been avoidant and I've been like, okay, whatever, and then not carry that stuff into my workplace, right? Whereas I wasn't avoidant in that moment. I was very anxious. I was thinking about like, what did I do wrong, or why me? You know, so just recognizing my attachment style and then recognizing how I'm attached in God. At that point in time where things were going on with my partner, at the time, my ex-partner, I was 100% avoidant with God. And I'm here to say that transparently, I was avoiding God at all costs. Funny enough, I was actually on the gospel choir. Wow, right? I was on the gospel choir because I wanted to get God, but I didn't want God, right? In a sense, like, it's like I wanted to be close enough to God, but when things got too close, I would be avoidant. And that's usually what happens in an avoidant attachment style. From there, building that self-awareness, understanding what you're experiencing, understanding your attachment style. Step 2 would be just building self-regulation skills. What's self-regulation? Well, let's say you're experiencing an emotion. When you experience emotion, you have a primary emotion, then you have a secondary emotion. Your primary emotion is what you feel right in the moment. It's pretty instantaneous. You don't really think about it, right? It's like you stub your toe out, that hurts, I'm feeling hurt, right? Or wow, somebody just stole my bike, right? Wow, I'm feeling angry, right? Those are primary emotions. Your primary emotions don't last very long. Max 5 minutes. After that 5th minute, And it's actually shorter than that. But after that 5th minute, you are now choosing to stay in an emotion. That becomes a secondary emotion. It's how you feel about your primary emotion. So maybe I'm hurt in the beginning and now I'm angry. So my secondary emotion is me choosing to stay angry. I don't want to choose to stay angry. So self-regulation states that, hey, I'm recognizing this emotion and I have the skills I need to move out of that emotion. So maybe I am doing something that I truly enjoy. Maybe I'm coping, maybe I'm rationalizing, maybe I'm reframing the situation. Somebody stole my bike. Well, hey, I always wanted a new bike. Now I get to go get another one if I have the means. Or somebody stole my bike. Well, you know what? I can walk, right? Heart health is great. So having the regulatory skills to move from one space to another can be very helpful when you are, in fact, trying to shift your attachment styles. When we want to self-regulate on the fly, grounding techniques can be helpful. If you saw my other videos, I talk a lot about breathing. I talk a lot about auditory. My favorite is the auditory mindfulness, where you stop, you listen for a couple minutes or a minute or two of all the things you hear, because your parasympathetic system will start to slow down, right? And it'll tell your body, hey, she's okay. Like, you don't need to do anything further. You don't need to start panicking. You don't need to start fighting anybody. So it's really important for us to do these skills, just finding some grounding. Grounding can also look like reciting your favorite Bible scripture, singing your favorite gospel song, not necessarily any, hey, shoot 'em up, bang, bang songs, right? Because that gives a different message to your brain. We need something that is super balanced, very uplifting. Step 3 would be creating secure relationships. When we're creating secure relationships, or let's say you're in a relationship and you want to shift it to secure, we have to be okay with expressing our needs clearly. For an anxious, secure person like myself, I should have been like, hey, I trusted you. I needed more trust. I needed this space for you to illustrate that trust to me as I illustrated to you. Instead, I was just very internal, like, what did I do? Baha, but woe it's me. For an avoidant person, it would be, hey, I want to build this connection, but I'm afraid. I'm afraid of the rejection, and so therefore I'm pulling away. But really, I need you to just let me know that if I state my needs, you're not going to leave, because that's truly what happens with avoidant people. It's like, hey, I don't even want to get into this before you hurt me, so I'm going to cut you off before you get the opportunity to hurt me. We can start to use also I feel statements when we are building these secure attachments. I feel this way when you do this, or I feel like I need a little bit of this from you. We shouldn't be afraid to state our needs to our partner, because our partner is actually supposed to be there and open to our feedback. Otherwise, why are you in a relationship? You can also try to be a little bit more assertive, right? So don't shy away from the hard things. So like if you're being avoidant, don't shy away from the conflict that might ensue. Like if something happens. So for example, we just got into, or something happened and it might cause an argument. It's okay. Be very clear on saying, hey, let's talk about this, or let's talk about this in 10 minutes. I like to tell people to create a safe word. Safe word, instead of saying, hey, I don't want to talk about it, because it can be very charged. A safe word could be, hey, penguin. And we've already established that penguin means I'm not in a space to talk about this right now, but we're going to talk about it in an hour. And in exactly an hour from when you said penguin, you are making a commitment to come back and have that conversation. We also want to rewire our negative thoughts when we are creating these secure attachments. So that would be challenging any negative belief that might come up. So that might look like, hey, I'm not worthy enough to be in this relationship. Or for me, it was like, why me? What did I do? Right? And me rewiring it helped myself to think about who God says I am, it helped me to think, okay, it's not me, right? Because if I'm aligned with God or Christ, we do know that perils are going to come, trials are going to come. It just means that I have to be steadfast in God. So whatever rewiring looks like for you, challenging that negative belief, challenging that belief that you're not good enough. Well, hey, I have to be good enough. I've done all these things. I've gotten to these places. I've accomplished these things. Just because this one person doesn't realize my worth, there are 1,000 other people who might realize my worth. So challenging those thoughts, because we're creating new pathways in our brain And those new pathways create a space for us to operate out of. That pathway that says I'm not worthy enough can be transformed into I'm worthy of all things, right? And when we're transforming that pathway, we now can operate from that place of abundance versus place of lack. I know it takes time, okay? It takes time to move from attachment to secure. Like I said before, we can have different styles and different realms of life, right? And the basis of secure attachment really does come from when we are with our parents. So maybe you are not securely attached with your parents, you might be avoidant, but with a friend, you might be securely attached. It transfers. There's some great tests out there that you can take that tell you where you are in each domain. I think it's called the Attachment Project. You guys can check it out. They have a great test where you take it. I think it might be like 50 questions or so, and it'll tell you if you're attached securely with your parent, your mom or your dad, with your partner if you have one, with your friends. I think the upgraded version might tell you if you're attached with your how attached you are in your workplace. These are great resources and tools because again, you can't move into another attachment until you understand how attached you are in different domains. So step 1 is super important. I really hope that these 3 steps helps in some way. Please remember to check out the link below so that you can grab your attached book. It's a game changer. Okay, grab your Increasing Connections book as well for those of you who wish to be successful but want to maintain very healthy relationships. It's a game changer as well, actually very transformative, interactive exercises in there actually that can help. If you enjoyed this episode, just let me know in the comments below. Remember to walk good, keep the vibes high, and click the next video. Bye.